Now we start the paper reading session. I see that there are 6 persons to present the paper, and we are to conclude at 1:15, which means again we have half an hour and 5 minutes for each paper. I would only make this advice that kindly do not try to read the paper, because most of them are lecturers, and when you start reading, the audience goes to sleep. So whatever might be the salient aspects of your paper, you kindly extract them, and it is possible to present the content of even the longest of a research work within about 5 minutes. So with this introduction, and again stressing that the time allotted is 5 minutes, I would invite Mrs. S. Padmasini Kannan, Planning and Development Officer, to present her paper.
Thank you. Good afternoon to all, dignitaries on the dais, and my friends and colleagues. I have come to share my thoughts on the role of the United Nations concerning human rights. Now, as my previous speaker already has touched upon that issue, we have been talking about the fundamental rights and the human rights, and the Constitution is there, and so many articles are being promulgated. But what do we see really is we don't follow or adopt these human rights. These human rights are written only in pen and paper. So the United Nations, when it was formed, though the main objective was to save the succeeding generations from the scourge of war, the second objective was to reaffirm faith in fundamental human rights, in the dignity and worthy of the human person, in the equal rights of men and women, and of nations large and small. This is the main objective. This is the main objective that I am going to say today a few words. Now, first, when we take about the fundamental human rights, each country has declared certain rights for every human being, that is, freedom for speech, freedom for thought, freedom for action. But do we have all these things now at present amidst us? Whenever we have got some problems, we want to declare it, we want to speak, we want to write, but whatever we say, we are being suppressed. But they say the United Nations have formed a Commission on Human Rights. Whenever there is a problem on large scale, see, for example, minorities are being condemned, or linguistic differences, or women are being suppressed, we can represent it. But is the United Nations, is the Commission on the United Nations is able to succeed on this? I'm not saying once again it is a forum for discussion, but we have to think. The recent conference, Women's Conference in Beijing, that has recently has been concluded, it has raised so many questions on the rights of women, whether it is a developing nation or developed countries. But there are problems existing concerning the linguistic minorities, and then also the racial differences, and then the difference between the women and men, and then the rich country and the poor country, and the developing country and developed country. It is rather at this context, though it may be a little out of context, but I have to say, when the great declaration has come on the United Nations, in UN, in America, they have decided that they will release the weapons to Pakistan. We have raised our objection for that, but nobody has heeded to it. But so what is the use of talking about the human rights when we are going to say all these things, when we are going to lose all these human rights? It's only on the side of paper. So that is the first fundamental human rights. And then in the dignity and worth of the human person. That is, a person, a human being is important. As one of the professors have pointed out, that is, the person is important. The advanced technological developments are not at all useful unless the man uses it right. Even in the school days, we will say the merits and demerits of science. The science is not to be blamed, but it is the human being who has to be blamed. Unless the human being uses it correctly, unless the human being uses it positively, we cannot have it. We talk about the fundamental rights. Recently, we have said that so many pilferages has happened in the development of science. The war side pilferage, confidential matters have been pilfered. So now, are we able to succeed to stop all these things through negotiation? Negotiation, we see in the paper that so many roundtable conferences are going on, and then also so many dignitaries come and talk, write, come away, forget. That is all. The ordinary human being is not being looked after at all. The last but not least, that is the equality between men and women. I am sorry to say, though many women are here to talk on these issues and everything, how many women, the unwanted people, the ignored women, they are not being looked after. Please don't judge, because a few handful of women have come here, we are all equal, we have obtained the freedom. No, even these women from home, when we come, we have experienced so many difficulties, and today being a Saturday. Okay, we don't enjoy the freedom as men. And so the women's rights, we have to see. So now, due to want of time, I am not able to say in detail, but the papers that I have given, in that I have discussed in detail about the various articles and covenants passed by the UNO and the UNO Commission. But only one thing I would like to say is, negotiation is very important. But of course, I agree with you completely that there is only one organization through which we can think of peace. So let us all strive our best to see that how much this organization can be supported. Thank you.
Very much. Thank you. The next speaker is Dr. Mrs. Gauri Sivaraman, United Nations and Peacekeeping. Kindly stick to the 5 minutes. Already your colleague has proved that women could take more time than men. So you may.
Thank you. Respected Chairperson, I would like to say this at the outset, that when teachers are asked not to read from the paper, we have the tendency to run away with the words. So I'd like to read extracts from my paper and save you a lot of time. I'd like you all to recall the stanza quoted by Madame Kim in the first session. There's just one moon and a golden sun. It means freedom and friendship to everyone. Though the mountains divide and the oceans are wide, it's a small world after all. This is the second stanza of the song that she quoted. It is a small, small world that we are living, but there are many, many problems to be solved. And the UN has been trying its level best. There are people who criticize the UN and quote examples of Somalia, Bosnia, and other places. There are others who defend and cite other examples. But before any criticism is made, one has to go into the field and see what are the practical aspects of any mandate that is put forward. Unless you are there out in the field, you may not know the practical difficulties that each person faces when they act as participants in a mission. Any criticism made without this knowledge will be lopsided. So I'm not here to make any criticism. I'm not defending UN because UN can defend itself. After all, what is UN but we who are parts of it? It is easy to wage a war, but it's very difficult to reinstate peace in a war-torn country. The responsibility of the UN on that score is increasing day by day. Many people believe that the UN is facing a great crisis, financial and political. What the UN suffers from is something that is more serious than shortage of funds. Peacekeeping is a quasi-military term. From the days of Hammarskjöld, who was dedicated to the non-violent resolutions of conflict, it has been the habit with the UN Secretariat to isolate the concepts of peace and military. Now, these two functions have to be brought together in order to make some solid contribution to restore peace to the nations of the world. Coordinating civilian and military personnel is another area which has not been looked into so far, and it needs to be looked into. When there is coordination between the civilian and the military staff, there can be much more contribution made towards peacekeeping in the world. Now, training of mission participants is an important area which has not been looked into in great detail. To solve the problem of unnecessary delay and unfamiliarity of the leaders and recruits with the terrain and the problem on military and civilian staff who pursue normal life in times of peace, but who can rise up to the occasion when there is a problem to be solved. The size of the contingent can be appropriate to the size of the member state. I have suggested other points which can be looked into by the UN. Support of all nations must be there for the UN. Services of specialists must be used. Peacekeeping requires expert knowledge of the terrain and the people. The services of political scientists, psychologists, economists, scholars, and academicians must be utilized to prepare a good plan that is solid and operational. So let us not let go of the retired teachers, academicians, and politicians. Decentralization is one of the many methods by which UN can operate. Instead of operating from one particular place, it can operate from many places because of developing technologies all over the world. Prevention is better than cure. So when UN has eyes all over the world, it can be keeping a close watch on all the activities of the world, and before anything starts, it can stop or hope to stop before anything bad happens in the world. Peacekeeping is only an interim measure. What happens before and after is equally important. So are important the other activities of the UN itself. However, it can be said that peacekeeping is more important because only when peace prevails, development can take place. When the UN can achieve the above-mentioned points, there may be a unified whole world and global security. I'd like to conclude with a stanza from Jagadguru Adi Shankaracharya, even before Bertrand Russell and Bharatiyar. He mentioned in this particular song, in this particular verse, that war must be abolished. Maitrim bhajata akila vijetrim atmavad eva parannabi pashyati yuddham tyajata spardam tyajata tyajata pareshva kramamakramanam Jananim prithivim kama dukhaste janako devaha sakala dayalu danyatu dattam dayadvam janataha shreyo bhuyat sakala jananam. Let there be prosperity all over the world. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Gauri Sivaraman. Ms. Menaka Menon from the Adarsh College.
The United Nations Organization.
From Adarsh School?
Yes.
Sorry for the correction.
Okay. The United Nations Organization was established 50 years ago, and since 1945, it has played a major role in maintaining international peace, improving the status of women and children, social development, fighting against the supply of arms and drugs, and also in protecting human rights. The UN has done a great deal of work in protecting and encouraging human rights the world over. After the Second World War, the inhuman treatment meted out to the Germans in Nazi concentration camps prompted concern over human rights. As a result, during the formation of the UN, the Charter's first article stated that the main purpose of the United Nations was to achieve international cooperation in solving international problems of an economic, social, cultural, or humanitarian nature, and in promoting and encouraging respect for human rights and fundamental freedom for all without discrimination of any kind. But then a basic question must arise. What are human rights? Due to various cultural and ideological differences and political disagreements, it is difficult to come to a consensus on them. A first step was taken in 1947 when ECOSOC's Commission on Human Rights, under the leadership of Eleanor Roosevelt, worked out a draft for the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Various political and civil rights were enumerated and included the right to life, liberty, equality, and security for all. Rights pertaining to the equality of women and men were also included. But what happens when these rights are violated? It's no secret that in the past, human rights have been brutally abused. Racial discrimination, apartheid, colonialism, slavery, and torture are all cases where human rights have been disregarded. 1965 to 1973. In other words, the Vietnam War. To me, these words conjure up images from Forrest Gump in my history textbook. But to others, these 8 years were a nightmare. 2 million dead, 3 million wounded, and hundreds and thousands of children were orphaned. And these grim statistics are from Vietnam alone. But they are not mere numbers. They represent the lives of millions of innocent people who were brutally murdered. Is this not a violation of a basic human right, the right to life? Tiananmen Square is also considered a violation of human rights. All individuals have the right to democracy, and when the people of China asked for this right, the result was Tiananmen Square. Unarmed students, men and women, were shot down by the army. All they wanted was democracy. Coming closer to home, travel to the northern state of Jammu and Kashmir. There is no question Kashmir is part of our nation. The issue need not even arise, and when it does, it points a finger at our territorial integrity. I am sure no nation in this world would willingly give a part of it away to another country. When unrest and turbulence arise in one's nation, is it not a government's duty to curb it? Is this a violation? The question remains unanswered. The unlawful occupation of Tibet by China, the issues in Kurdistan and Timor-Leste are all examples of the violation of human rights. But we must now see what we can do to prevent that this does not happen in the future. The world is no longer what it used to be. War, hatred, poverty are all we seem to hear about these days. So as a great man once said, heal the world, make it a better place for you, for me, and the entire human race. Thank you.
Thank you very much.